We think we're safe as long as we're underground. But what if the very ground you're standing on suddenly moves? In just a few seconds, nature can destroy an entire city, collapse thousands of buildings, and change the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Beneath our feet, massive slabs of earth are constantly moving and colliding. As the force builds up, the tension also rises. And when it is finally released, the result can be a disaster that is almost impossible to escape. These are 15 of the most devastating earthquakes and other disasters in history. But before we start, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. Number 15, Spitak earthquake. We'll start in the Caucasus, in Armenia, back when it was still part of the declining Soviet Union. The city of Spitak was an industrial center, built as a symbol of progress, a promise to change the future of the Armenians. But they didn't expect that the city was built on top of a complex system of faults resulting from the collision of the Arabian Plate and the Eurasian Plate. On December 7th, 1988, in the middle of the cold winter in Armenia, a magnitude 6.8 earthquake struck. The ground suddenly split open, and the disaster was made even worse by the negligence of the government. Many buildings from the Soviet era were constructed using cheap materials, so they collapsed within seconds. Approximately 25,000 people lost their lives, many of them crushed by the collapsed buildings. Meanwhile, the survivors had to endure temperatures reaching -20 degrees Celsius while they had no proper shelter. The rescue operation by the Soviet Union was very slow and insufficient, so they were forced to ask for help from Western countries. Spitak was rebuilt from scratch, but it never fully regained its former state. This disaster caused severe hardship throughout the Republic of Armenia and contributed to the collapse of the Soviet bloc. Number 14, Haiti earthquake. Now let's go to the Caribbean, to the country of Haiti. Even before, Haiti had already been experiencing severe poverty, widespread deforestation, and long-standing political turmoil. Its capital, Port-au-Prince, is located near the Enriquillo Fault, a place where the Caribbean Plate and the North American Plate grind against each other. On January 10th, 2012, a magnitude 7.0 earthquake struck the area at a depth of approximately 13 kilometers. Because it was so close to the surface, the shaking was extremely strong. The country did not have adequate earthquake protocols, nor proper building codes for earthquakes. There are entire communities made up of cheap houses built with hollow blocks, including roofs and structures made of heavy concrete. Because of the intense shaking, many of these collapsed right on top of their residents. More than 250,000 people died, as many victims were buried under the rubble and widespread infrastructure was destroyed. But the problems didn't end there. A cholera outbreak followed, which further increased the death toll, completely paralyzed the country, and caused long-term effects on Haiti's economy and government. Number 13, El Asnam earthquake. Let's cross the Atlantic and go to Algeria in North Africa. Here lies the city of El Asnam, where authorities ignored previous earthquakes and continued constructing buildings without proper regulations. The rapid development of the city happened right in the area where the African Plate and Eurasian Plate experienced strong movements. On October 10th, 1980, a magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck the area and caused approximately 36 kilometers of surface rupture. In some areas, the ground rose by up to 6 meters. Many modern buildings that were constructed without sufficient reinforcement experienced severe structural failure. Buildings collapsed and hospitals, schools, and entire communities were hit. Approximately 5,000 people lost their lives, while around 300,000 were left homeless. To erase the memory of repeated destruction, the government changed the name of the city and called it TLEF. Eventually, this tragedy also became the reason for Algeria to implement the first strict earthquake regulations in the region. Number 12, Manjil Rudbar earthquake. Let's go to the Middle East, in northwestern Iran. Near the Caspian Sea lies the mountainous region of Gilan, a place known for its steep and rocky terrain. Here stand hundreds of villages made up of traditional buildings, built right on the spot where the Arabian Plate and Eurasian Plate collide. On June 21, 1990, around midnight, a powerful magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck the area while people were sound asleep. With the first tremor alone, the heavy traditional houses made of mud and adobe collapsed, burying many people. But the disaster was not over yet. Because of the steep and unstable terrain, a massive landslide and avalanche occurred, burying entire valleys. The main roads leading to the communities were also destroyed. Because of this, many areas were completely isolated for 3 days, and heavy equipment or aid from outside couldn't get in during the most critical time for rescue. The survivors were forced to dig through the rubble with their own hands in an attempt to save their families. In the end, it is estimated that more than 40,000 people lost their lives because of this disaster. Number 11. Vrancia earthquake. Now let's go to Eastern Europe, to Romania. Its capital, Bucharest, is located on a vast and densely populated plain, just a few kilometers from the Carpathian Mountains. But the city is at risk because of the Vrancia seismic zone, a deep area where a huge amount of energy accumulates underground. This energy can be transmitted directly toward Bucharest. On March 4th, 1977, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck from a depth of about 100 kilometers. Because the origin was deep, the strong seismic waves spread toward the capital. Buildings constructed before World War II shook. In just a few seconds, 32 large buildings completely collapsed. Approximately 1,500 people died, including many well-known personalities and members of Romania's intellectual community. But the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu used the chaos as an opportunity. Under the pretext that buildings with structural risks needed to be demolished, he ordered the demolition of several historic parts of Bucharest that had survived the earthquake. Instead of simply reconstructing, he used the disaster to change the face of the city and advance his totalitarian ambitions. Number 10. Guatemala earthquake. Now let's go to Central America, to Guatemala. At that time, the country was facing intense political tension and a huge gap between the rich and the poor. Many indigenous communities were forced to live in simple houses made of adobe. And these communities were located right next to the Motagua Fault, the boundary between the North American Plate and the Caribbean Plate. On February 4, 1976, at around 3 in the morning, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake suddenly shook the country. The ground movement was extremely strong, and there was a surface rupture that extended for about 250 kilometers. The houses made of mud and adobe collapsed almost immediately, and many people were buried while they were sleeping. Meanwhile, many modern buildings in wealthier areas remained almost intact. In total, about 23,000 people lost their lives, while around 1 million people were left homeless. The situation worsened due to the slow and inefficient distribution of humanitarian aid by the military government, which caused intense anger and protests from civilians. The disaster did not only destroy homes, it buried entire communities and further intensified the bloody civil war in Guatemala that lasted for almost 2 decades. Number 9. Tangshan earthquake. Let's go to East Asia, to the coast of China. At that time, Tangshan was a large city with about 1 million residents, and its economy was mainly centered on coal mining. But the precautions taken by the authorities against earthquakes were not enough. They didn't know that the massive industrial city was built on top of a fault system in the Eurasian Plate. On July 28, 1986, at around 3 in the morning, a powerful magnitude 7 earthquake struck. A 9.5 earthquake suddenly shook the city. Most of the buildings did not have enough reinforcement. In just 15 seconds, approximately 85% of the buildings collapsed. Meanwhile, the mines were full of workers on the night shift when the tunnels collapsed. thousands of miners were suddenly buried under tons of rocks and soil. According to the official count, 242,000 lives were lost, while more than 1 million people were affected. But according to some international experts, the real number may be several times higher. Because of the government's ideological stance, the Maoist regime rejected aid from other countries. The survivors were forced to dig through the rubble with their own hands to retrieve bodies and search for their families. And because of the state's intense information suppression, it became difficult to know the true extent of the tragedy. In the end, the Tangshan earthquake was recognized as one of the most devastating earthquakes of the 20th century. Number 8. Kashmir earthquake. Now let's go to South Asia, to the mountainous region of Kashmir. At that time, this place was one of the biggest flashpoints for military tension and diplomatic conflict between Pakistan and India. And right beneath this disputed territory lies the area where the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate collide. On October 8, 2005, just a few minutes before 9 in the morning, a powerful magnitude 7.6 earthquake shook the slopes of the Himalayas. The ground shook so violently that the mountains became unstable and triggered numerous landslides. Entire villages were literally wiped off the map. Millions of tons of rocks and soil buried the roads, cutting off the victims and survivors from any medical help. And because it was winter in the mountains, thousands of survivors had to endure the extreme cold and snow without adequate shelter. The destruction was so widespread that Pakistan and India were forced to temporarily ease their tensions and open some sections of their border. These were sections of their militarized border open to allow humanitarian aid to enter. Despite this, the impact was still enormous. Around 86,000 people lost their lives, while no less than 3 million people were affected. Number 7. Hawke's Bay earthquake. Let's cross over to Oceania and go to the North Island of New Zealand. At that time, the prosperous city of Napier had an economy centered on maritime trade. Most of the residents worked in brick buildings scattered throughout the city center. The area is in an active tectonic zone near the boundary of the Pacific, Kermadec, and Australian plates. On February 3, 1931, just a few minutes before 11 in the morning, a powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake struck Hawke's Bay. The shaking was so intense that the ground rose by more than 2 meters in just a few seconds. Buildings collapsed onto the streets, but the disaster didn't end there. Just a few minutes later, the broken gas pipes caused massive fires. The flames spread quickly and burned the ruins of the city. In total, 256 people lost their lives. Because of the intense movement of the earth, an entire lagoon dried up, and thousands of hectares of new land became available for settlement. Napier was completely rebuilt, and instead of just restoring the old design of the city, they used the more modern Art Deco architectural style, along with more flexible and earthquake-resistant materials. That tragedy is why Napier has the distinctive look it still has today. Number 6. Earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Let's go back to the Middle East, at the border of Turkey and Syria. At that time, millions of refugees from the war were living in the area, most of them in buildings that were hastily constructed and lacked proper support. These communities were built on top of the East Anatolian Fault, a place where the Arabian Plate and the Anatolian Plate directly collide. On February 6, 2023, at around 4 in the morning, a powerful magnitude 7.8 earthquake shook the region. Just a few hours later, it was followed by another strong tremor that reached magnitude 7.5. The consecutive earthquakes caused massive destruction. Thousands of homes collapsed, from the shelters of refugees to modern buildings in large cities. In many places, the concrete was literally shattered into pieces, leaving the steel reinforcements exposed. And the long-standing problem with construction and engineering standards resurfaced. The so-called construction amnesties became even more controversial, a system where the government forgives certain illegal constructions in exchange for the payment of fines. Because of this, thousands of buildings can be reached. And when the earthquake struck, many of these buildings became traps for their own residents. In total, more than 50,000 people died, while millions more lost their homes. Number 5. Earthquake in Mexico. Let's go to North America, to the coast of Michoacan. This is a geologically active area, but the biggest impact of the earthquake was felt in Mexico City. The city was built on a former lake, so the ground underneath is very soft. During a strong earthquake, this soft ground can behave like gel, amplifying the shaking of buildings. And the entire area is at risk because of the subduction zone where the Cocos Plate is sliding beneath the North American Plate. In September 1985, around 7 in the morning, a powerful magnitude 8.0 earthquake originating from Michoacan shook Mexico. Because of the effect of the soft soil in the Valley of Mexico, the shaking in the capital became even stronger. Many buildings in the center of Mexico City collapsed. And exactly 32 years later, in 2017, another magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck Mexico City. Again, on September 19. The earthquake on September 19, 1985, claimed an estimated 10,000 lives and left around 250,000 victims. Because of the slow response of the government, ordinary citizens were forced to help in searching for and rescuing survivors trapped under the rubble. But from this tragedy, a more organized and active civil society movement was formed in Mexico. And as part of the changes implemented after the disaster, the city established one of the world's first earthquake early warning systems. A tragedy that not only claimed thousands of lives, but also completely changed the way Mexico prepares for earthquakes. Number 4. Japan earthquake. Let's go back to East Asia, to the Pacific coast of Japan. Japan is one of the best prepared countries and has some of the most advanced earthquake systems. It has buildings designed to withstand strong tremors, hydraulic shock absorbers, and large coastal defenses. All of this technology was built to deal with one of the most dangerous seismic zones in the world, the subduction zone where the Pacific Plate and Okhotsk Plate move. On March 11, 2011, just a few minutes before 3 p.m., a powerful, magnitude 9.1 earthquake shook the Tohoku coast. The intense shaking lasted for almost 6 minutes. Japanese engineering played a huge role. Many buildings withstood the shaking, which possibly saved countless lives. But there is one thing that buildings cannot stop: the ocean. After the earthquake, a massive tsunami hit the coast. In some places, the waves reached about 40 meters high, surpassing seawalls and coastal defenses. Nearly 20,000 people lost their lives, while hundreds of thousands were left homeless. But one of the most severe effects happened at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Water entered the plant's cooling systems, causing the reactors to break down and radioactive materials to leak. There was a massive evacuation and radiation contamination, and Japan's nuclear power industry was greatly affected. This disaster showed that no matter how advanced a country is, there are forces of nature that cannot be fully controlled. Number 3. Earthquake in the Indian Ocean. Let's go to Southeast Asia, to the ocean near Sumatra. At that time, many countries surrounding the Indian Ocean had almost no early warning systems or proper plans for rapid coastal evacuation. The large communities, tourist destinations, and fishing villages in the region are situated around a massive subduction zone. Here, the Indian-Australian Plate is subducting beneath the overlying plates. On December 26, 2004, at around 8 in the morning, a massive magnitude 9.1 earthquake suddenly shook beneath the ocean. The rupture zone reached approximately 1,500 kilometers and lasted for almost 10 minutes. The movement under the sea was so strong that the seabed rose and billions of tons of water were pushed. And after that, the tsunami came. Huge waves hit the coastlines of 14 countries. Entire communities were swallowed by the water. Around 277,000 people lost their lives, while almost 2 million people were affected. This disaster showed how great the lack of communication and preparedness was among the countries. Some seismologists detected the massive earthquake on their monitoring systems, but there was no adequate way to immediately alert the communities in its path. This tragedy became a major reason to strengthen the Indian Ocean tsunami warning system and improve international emergency protocols. Number 2, earthquake in Alaska. Let's go to the farthest part of North America, in Alaska. At that time, there were only a few communities in the vast territory. Many coastal settlements were isolated from each other, while Anchorage was still a growing city, with some areas built on soft and unstable ground. And the entire region sits right on top of a massive subduction zone, where the Pacific Plate is sliding underneath the North American Plate. On Good Friday, March 27, 1964, at around 5:30 in the afternoon, the ground suddenly shook as a massive magnitude 9.2 earthquake struck. It was one of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded in history. For almost 5 minutes, the shaking did not stop. In Anchorage, soil liquefaction occurred, where the soft ground lost its stability and almost acted like a liquid. The ground gave way beneath residential areas, and entire sections of the community collapsed. But it wasn't just the ground that moved. The earthquake also triggered massive tsunamis that struck the coastal ports of Alaska. The waves even traveled across the Pacific Ocean and reached as far as some communities in California. Because there were still few people in the area and the distances between communities were large, the number of casualties was lower compared to the extent of the destruction. Approximately 131 people lost their lives. But the physical impact on the land was enormous. Because of tectonic deformation, some forests were completely submerged underwater, while certain parts of the coastline rose by as much as 12 meters from their previous height. The movement of the land was so great that it completely changed the shape of some parts of the North American coastline. And even today, the traces of that earthquake can still be seen in the very shape of Alaska. Number 1, the Valdivia earthquake. We end here in South America, on the coast of Chile. Chile is a country that is always facing the threat of powerful earthquakes. As a result, it is among the most advanced Latin American countries in earthquake preparedness. A large part of its infrastructure and communities are built near the Peru-Chile Trench, a massive subduction zone where the Nazca Plate is sliding beneath the South American Plate. In May 1960, around 3 in the afternoon, the city of Valdivia was shaken by a powerful magnitude 9.5 earthquake. This is the strongest earthquake ever recorded by modern instruments in history. The rupture zone was vast, stretching to about 1,000 kilometers, and the intense shaking lasted for almost 10 minutes. The energy it released was immense, estimated to be equivalent to the energy from thousands of nuclear bombs. The force of the earthquake changed the flow of rivers, caused mountains to collapse, and made the ground sink in some areas. Entire communities were almost swallowed by landslides. But again, the earthquake was not the only problem. The tsunami came. In some parts of Chile, the waves reached a height of about 25 meters. The tsunami crossed the entire Pacific Ocean and also hit Hawaii and Japan, where it caused further destruction and loss of life. Despite the immense strength of the earthquake, the number of casualties was lower compared to the scale of the disaster. Because southern Chile had a smaller population, and many of the communities had sturdier houses and a higher level of preparedness. However, it is estimated that 2,000 people lost their lives, while approximately 2 million people were left homeless. There were also vast areas of Chilean territory that sank or were permanently altered due to the movement of the earth. This tragedy became a major reason for Chile to tighten its building and structural engineering codes. And the lessons from the Valdivia earthquake also influenced how other countries prepare for strong earthquakes.